Okay, so starting off today's show, we will be doing the same thing that we do every Monday here on the Zach Kroll Sports Podcast, and that is with my top 10 takeaways of the week. Somehow, some way, it is week 13 of college basketball season, continues to fly by, and we are 2 weeks away from Selection Sunday. It's unreal. But yeah, without further ado, it was a loaded week of college basketball. Let's get to it with my takeaways. Takeaway number one. I wanted to say congratulations to Roy Williams and the North Carolina Tar Heels for their win over a very good Florida State team on Saturday, because with that win, it was the 900th career win in the great legendary career of UNC head coach Roy Williams. And Roy has been on a great run with UNC. His Tar Heel teams have been very consistent over the last 10 to 12 years. And I'm not going to lie, I was really impressed with what they were able to do on Saturday against Florida State. And let me tell you why. I think with this win, North Carolina now goes from a team that was just very little above the bubble to a team that right now could say, okay, we are pretty comfortably in the NCAA tournament right now. And the good thing is, this team is only getting better. Besides Garrison Brooks, this is a team full of mostly young guys, but guys like Caleb Love, guys like Armando Bacot, guys like Deron Sharp, they were able to come back from a 13-point deficit against a very good Florida State team at home on Saturday. Big-time win for Roy Williams and North Carolina. They're going to be an 8 or 9 seed no one will want to see in their bracket. Takeaway number 2. I feel like it's becoming a routine during this segment, but the Minnesota Golden Gophers are in trouble. And if they don't make the NCAA tournament, I think Richard Pitino should go into next year on the hot seat, because there is no reason, considering how weak this current version of the bubble is, that Minnesota, a team that is playing in the Big Ten, with plenty of opportunities to get as many wins as possible, they have a win over Michigan, who I just ranked as my number 1 team in college basketball, and they have a win over Ohio State, who's in my top 10. With those 2 wins, there is no reason why Minnesota should be anywhere close to the bubble right now. But when you look at the Golden Gophers and their record right now, it could be keeping them out of the NCAA tournament when we're all said and done. 6-12 in the Big Ten. They can't win a road game. 13-12 overall. Nope. I do not think the Minnesota Golden Gophers are a tournament team. And the fact that they blew 2 games against Northwestern and against Nebraska, one of them at home, not good. Minnesota will go to Penn State on Wednesday. That's a game they probably have to win if they want to get in. Same thing, big time Saturday, noon against Rutgers. But we'll see what Minnesota could do in the Big Ten tournament. They're obviously going to have plenty of opportunities, but really, one game in the Big Ten tournament that they lose may be their only opportunity if they're not careful. And to be honest, if Minnesota can't beat Nebraska or Northwestern, why should I have any confidence that they could beat anyone else in the Big Ten Conference? Takeaway number 3. I wanted to talk about Saturday's Michigan-Indiana game from both sides. I'll start out with Michigan. There's nothing more to be said. This is another team that we talk about every week on this show, and we just marvel at the job that Coach Juwan Howard has done since he's taken over at Michigan. But here's the other encouraging thing if you are a fan of the Wolverines. A sign of championship teams are when many different players throughout that team could get better over the course of the season and improve. And that is exactly what I am seeing at Michigan right now. Franz Wagner, Hunter Dickinson, Mike Smith, these guys are getting better. And as the season is going on, they are getting ready to be able to rise up in a bigger role. and Michigan is experienced with Livers and Wagner. They have some youth with Dickinson. I love this team. They are, right now, in my opinion, the best team in college basketball. But Indiana, man, what a disgrace. First of all, they flat out blow a game a couple weeks ago at home to Michigan State. That's a game that I know Michigan State's been playing better of late, but if you're Indiana, that is a game that you have to win. You then also lose to Rutgers. There are plenty of other games so far this season where the Hoosiers have just flat out not showed up. And this is another team that, like Minnesota, is playing in a conference like the Big Ten, and right now is no guarantee whatsoever to make the tournament. As a matter of fact, I think right now they may miss the NCAA tournament because Indiana is just not a very good basketball team. And if you watch them against Michigan, I mean, my God, Hunter Dickinson shutting down Trace Jackson Davis. The Hoosiers are 12-12 overall, 7-10 in Big Ten play. The remaining schedule for them at Michigan State tomorrow. They will then head to Purdue on Saturday. And then the Big Ten tournament. Right now, if the Hoosiers lose both of those games, I do not think they are a tournament team, and I have no reason to believe that they will win those games. Takeaway number 4, I just wanted to really compliment Cade Cunningham and the Oklahoma State Cowboys. What a week for these Cowboys, because I watched Oklahoma State up close and personal twice this week, once against Texas Tech at home, and once against Oklahoma on the road. Both games go to overtime, and keep in mind, when games go to overtime, for a young team like Oklahoma State, that's supposed to rattle them. That's supposed to get them a little bit uncomfortable, given the fact that, yeah, I get it, there are no fans, but at the same time, this is a team full of freshmen that are very inexperienced. And Oklahoma State was able to win both games, and then on Saturday they go into Norman and win without Isaac Likely in a rivalry game. Wow. What a job by Oklahoma State, and they will be back in action again tonight against Oklahoma. I'll be really looking forward to that one. Classic rivalry game, but I gotta say, I am a big fan of these Cowboys right now. I am buying stock in these Cowboys, and I think right now, if you ask me, Zach, who is going to be a 5 or 6 seed that could realistically get to the Final Four, my answer would be Oklahoma State. I do believe Cade Cunningham is the best player in college basketball, and he showed us on Saturday that he has the ability to just flat out lead his team to a victory and say, boys, get on my back. A 40-point effort by Cunningham for the Cowboys on Saturday, and the Big 12 is loaded. We were talking about Michigan, Indiana, and Minnesota earlier. I think the Big 10 is a little bit overvalued right now as a conference. Obviously, Michigan is great, but besides them, I don't necessarily know if there are any real contenders to make a deep run. I think Illinois can as well. We're going to get to them a little bit later in the show, but I think the Big 12 is a deeper, better league than the Big 10. Speaking of the Big Ten, we'll stay there. I wanted to give another shout out, and this is another guy who I've been mentioning a lot during this segment over the last couple weeks, and this is surprisingly a guy that over the years I haven't been too fond of, but I do believe that this season has been the best coaching job of Mark Turgeon's career since at least he got to Maryland, I would say. Because the Terrapins were a team that going into the season, I'm not going to lie, I wasn't very high on them at all. But I watched Maryland on Sunday against Michigan State. I watched Maryland against Purdue a couple weeks ago pick up an awesome home victory. I also watched Maryland take on Rutgers on the road and get a W. Maryland is one of the better teams in the Big Ten right now, and they are another team that when I watch them, their players are actually improving. Eric Ayala and Aaron Wiggins have been two guys in this Maryland program for a while now, but they have been guys who have been willing to take on a little bit of a bigger role. I love Donta Scott. All three of those guys are averaging double figures. Darryl Morsell is a tough, gritty guard. And keep in mind, last year was the year for Maryland. I said it, that if any team got screwed by the pandemic more than anyone, it was Maryland, because they lost Anthony Cowan, they lost Jalen Smith, and I do believe if the tournament would have happened last year, Maryland could have made the Final Four. They were that good. And the fact that they are even in the conversation for a tournament bid right now is very impressive. And Maryland right now is a better basketball team than Indiana. They're a better basketball team than Minnesota. And they're a better basketball team than Michigan State. As we saw yesterday, I am super impressed by what Coach Turgeon and company have done. Also, I'll give a shout out to Michigan State. I know they lost to Maryland, but they were able to pick up 2 very nice wins against Ohio State and Illinois at home this week. We're going to get into Illinois a little bit later in the show, but the Spartans right now are on the bubble. They have a good shot of playing their way in. Takeaway number 6. When we talk about the disappointing teams in college basketball, and I understand there are a lot of them, but I think Tennessee has to be at the top of this list. I thought that the Volunteers were a team filled with a good combination of experience and youth, along with a great defensive approach that would be able to get the job done for them. And I've been a guy that has been a Rick Barnes supporter over the last couple of years. I thought last year Tennessee did a really good job improving as the season went on and playing their way close to the bubble. But so far this season, man, they've been disappointing. They can't score the basketball. That's a problem. And when you look at Rick Barnes, I've been a guy who's been defending him. He's had some great regular seasons, but this season is hard to defend. And right now, the Volunteers just look like a bunch of guys that don't do anything well. There is no reason why Tennessee, given their group of guys, should be losing to Auburn without Sharif Cooper. Luckily, the Vols do have some quality wins to hang their hat on, which is going to get them into the NCAA tournament, but their win against Missouri isn't looking great right now. That win isn't aging so well. All I will say is they're lucky they got the win over Arkansas, because the way the Hogs are playing right now, and we're going to get to what Coach Eric Musselman and company have done later in the show, I think Rick Barnes and the Tennessee Vols are in trouble. Out of all the teams in the SEC, Tennessee is one team I am definitely not buying stock in right now. I think they are very vulnerable of getting upset early in the tournament. We'll stay in the SEC with takeaway number 7. I wanted to give a shout out to my guy, Nate Oates, because Alabama basketball won their first SEC regular season basketball title since 2002 the other day. And I think we all realized that Nate Oates was going to be a pretty solid hire at Alabama. But what I love about this year's Tide team, and really the story of Nate Oates and how exactly he's gotten here, is the fact that it really has been able to take not too much time. And I remember watching Alabama earlier this season against Western Kentucky lose that game at home, and I was like, man, no matter how much talent Alabama has, are the Tide ever going to be good? Because if you remember, they had plenty of talent when Avery Johnson was their head coach, and still they were never able to win anything. But overnight, Nate Oates has gotten his guys into this program, and they have done a phenomenal job playing for their coach, and Alabama wins the SEC in basketball. Now, the Tide did struggle a little bit this week with a loss against Arkansas. If you're an Alabama fan, I think you would want to see your team build a little bit more momentum from now until when the tournament starts up. But what I'll say about Alabama is this: there are very few coaches in college basketball that I like more than Nate Oates. And this guy's story is unbelievable. It was only 10 years ago, just about, a little bit less, that he was teaching high school math classes, and now less than 10 years later, he is a D1 coach about to wrap up the SEC title. It already has been wrapped up, and he's about to lead Alabama to the NCAA tournament. This is also the guy that eliminated DeAndre Ayton and that Arizona team from the tournament that year. I'm a big fan of Nate Oates and what he's been able to do changing around the culture at Alabama. Takeaway number 8, it's got to be frustrating to be a Kentucky fan, right? Because I'm not going to lie, Kentucky really did have a nice stretch where they looked pretty good. And they played well in the first half, I would say, against Florida. They showed some promise. Jacob Toppin played really well. But at the same time, in the second half of that game, Kentucky showed many of the same issues that they had shown early throughout the season. And Kentucky had a really nice win going to Tennessee, getting the job done. They had a nice win going to Vandy, getting the job done. They had a nice win against Auburn. They were competitive against Arkansas, but disappointing loss against Florida. Their next 2 games will be at Ole Miss, home South Carolina, and Kentucky's only shot at making March Madness right now is obviously winning the SEC tournament. We'll see if they have any shot at doing that. And Duke also, another disappointing loss for the Blue Devils against Louisville. And Duke looked really good against Syracuse. I was watching that game close and personal last Monday. I was impressed. But at the same time, Duke against Louisville was very disappointing. Matthew Hurt played really well, but besides him, no one else was really able to get going. And I think that with Kentucky, Duke, and Michigan State all taking losses this week, I feel like we all realized, like, yeah, these Blue Bloods were playing a little bit better, but they dug themselves in such a big hole so early in the season with their poor play that who really knows how far they were going to be able to get with this dream late run at a tournament. I think right now, in terms of likeliness, I would still say Michigan State is the most likely out of that group of 3 to make it, just because they play in the Big Ten, they'll have more opportunities. But Duke and Kentucky really disappointed me on Saturday. Not good efforts at all, especially Duke. In overtime, that's a game you got to win. Takeaway number 9, another team that I am super disappointed in is Jay Wright and the Villanova Wildcats, who lost to Butler on Sunday. And I understand, Hinkle Fieldhouse has been a place that has given Villanova fits over the last couple of years. I get it, but we all know this isn't a vintage Butler team. They're missing Aaron Thompson, their best player. They are under 500 overall. They're one of the worst teams in the Big East, and still Villanova can't beat them. I think we're starting to realize that Villanova just isn't as good as we all thought they were. And I think they have an argument to be one of the more disappointing teams in all of college basketball this season, because I predicted them to be the number 1 team in the country in the preseason. That's how much stock I put in Jay Wright and his group, and right now they are just decreasing stock-wise, and I think even though they lost on Saturday, Creighton is the best team in the Big East right now. Villanova will actually take on Creighton this week at home. That is a game they have to have, and if they don't, then I don't really know where Villanova is going to go from here in terms of their tournament aspirations, because really besides the one win against Texas, they haven't shown me the ability to win against quality opponents. They beat UConn. Okay, that's a fine win, but the Big East is so down this year, plus the COVID pauses. I think we kind of got fooled with Villanova, and the fact that they were just not losing games, we just kept them that high. And I understand Jay Wright and his team's pedigree. We get it. Plus you have Robinson Earl and Gillespie. Villanova should be better than they are right now. There's no reason why they should lose to Butler. I'm curious to see what they do against Creighton. And then in the Big East tournament, that game against the Blue Jays is one they have to have. And finally, takeaway number 10. I have been very harsh of Luka Garza and Iowa so far this season. I'm a guy that has been on the record of saying that Iowa will not make the Final Four. They won't even make the Elite Eight. And it's just because I thought they were too soft and they shot the 3-ball too much. But what I will say is this. That game against Ohio State on Sunday was their best performance of the season. And that was honestly, I think, one of Fran McCaffrey's better wins since he's taken over in Iowa City. Because, let me say this, that is not an easy game to win. Ohio State needed that game. Ohio State going into that game yesterday was coming off the loss against Michigan. They were coming off the loss against Michigan State, and Iowa went in there and really beat them up from start to finish. Now, we've seen Iowa in big games before this not show up. We saw them get blown out by Michigan, but Michigan's really good. Michigan's blown everyone out. We saw them get blown, or they lost to Illinois. They also have had some tough losses to Indiana, games like that. But at the same time, Iowa is a top 10 team. I think this season in college basketball, we're realizing that besides that top group, anywhere from 5 to 20, the difference isn't that much. I have West Virginia right now as a top 5 team. I think the difference between them and Iowa isn't that big whatsoever, but I just wanted to give a shout out to the Hawkeyes for what they were able to do on Sunday against Ohio State. That was their most impressive effort of the season. We all know how good and how special of a player Luka Garza is. Now, if Bohannon and Wieskamp and Frederick could make shots and Keegan Murray could keep on developing, I think the Hawkeyes could be a problem. Also, I wanted to say it's super unfortunate what happened to Jack Nungy. I wish him a speedy recovery for the Hawkeyes.